My fiancée was unfaithful to me, became pregnant, and attributed the pregnancy to an ex-partner from my childhood. Consequently, I am currently the subject of criticism from numerous individuals, who are urging me to forgive him. In order to ascertain the most appropriate course of action, I have spent several days perusing posts on this forum in search of solutions to my own situation. However, I am uncertain as to the suitability of this subreddit as a source of advice. As a novice to this platform, I am seeking counsel from individuals who have experience navigating similar circumstances. I would like to begin by offering my sincerest apologies for any grammatical or stylistic errors in my writing. English is not my native language, and I am a French speaker. It has been approximately 2 weeks since I became aware of the infidelity of my fiancée, Marie, with her former romantic partner. Her rationale for the infidelity was her feelings of insecurity due to my ex-partner, Samia. It is, without a doubt, the most illogical and implausible justification I have ever encountered. However, the most distressing aspect is the overwhelming consensus and pressure from others to forgive her. I am seeking the perspectives of individuals who are not emotionally invested in the situation. To provide context, I will briefly summarize the history between Samia and me. The two children met when they were 3 years old. Samia's mother was a nanny in the family home and looked after several children, including Marie. The two children were inseparable, and their mothers became friends. They decided to place the children in the same school, and Marie spent her entire childhood, until she was 13, with Samia. They were known as the Siamese twins. During our formative years, we engaged in frequent disagreements. However, we were able to maintain a sense of solidarity with our peers, which led to our marginalization within the social structure. Despite this, we were not concerned with the social consequences, as long as we could support each other. At the age of 11, our family began to perceive our relationship as unhealthy and advised us to seek out other friendships. It was during this period of separation that we came to recognize the depth of our mutual affection, yet our respective families espoused a markedly conservative outlook. She hailed from an Arab background, while I was of African descent. Consequently, we resorted to concealing our romantic involvement. One evening when I was 13, I inadvertently compromised our secret by climbing through her window to her room on the first floor. While this action was undoubtedly risky, it was an exhilarating experience. I had engaged in similar activities on previous occasions. On this occasion, we were simply conversing and kissing intermittently. There was no further physical contact. However, her father abruptly opened the door without warning, caught us in the act of kissing, and attempted to contact the police. I attempted to flee through the window but fell and sustained a fracture to my arm. The incident attracted the attention of numerous neighbors, who were present at the time. The incident was widely discussed in the neighborhood. Her father was not pleased with me and considered filing a complaint against me, even though I was not at significant risk of punishment given my age. Nevertheless, it was a highly embarrassing situation for my family. Consequently, my father decided to send me to Africa to live for an undetermined period. However, the primary motivation for this decision was the separation was intended to be permanent. I attempted to adjust to my new circumstances, and she did the same. Despite the distance, we managed to maintain communication through online platforms. When I returned to France after completing high school, it felt as if we had never left each other. We continued to engage in clandestine relationships. At the age of 20, it became evident that we desired to spend the remainder of our lives together. It was naive of us to believe that it would be that simple. We opted to inform our families that we intended to wed. However, for them, it was as if we had announced the apocalypse. Our respective families wanted everyone to get married according to their cultural traditions. The neighborhood was rife with tension. From an early age, we had become the subject of considerable scrutiny and commentary. Our lives were the subject of frequent discussion and commentary. It was a highly painful experience. We attempted to persevere for a year. She urged us to complete our studies in another city, a considerable distance from Paris and our respective families. However, at that time, my father was unwell. I chose to remain in the relationship, but following my father's death, I found myself lacking the motivation to continue. Consequently, I initiated the separation, while she opted to relocate to another city. We ceased all communication, and I was no longer willing to live in a neighborhood where our lives were subject to constant scrutiny. I opted to move to the student residence of my university represented a particularly challenging period. I returned to my family on weekends, and on one occasion at a wedding, I encountered Marie. She had recently relocated to the neighborhood with her family. We were seated at the same table and spent the evening exchanging jokes. We proceeded to discuss our respective lives. I informed her about Samia. She revealed that she had terminated her relationship with her former partner after 2 years due to his reluctance to abstain from sexual intercourse before marriage. However, he was unable to maintain the relationship. She suggested that he marry her, but he was not prepared to do so, leading her to terminate the relationship. We were two individuals grappling with significant personal challenges. She informed me of her relationship with Samia. After 2 years, she terminated the relationship because she was opposed to premarital sexual intercourse. However, her partner was not amenable to this decision and proposed marriage, which she rejected. Consequently, she terminated the relationship. We were two individuals experiencing distress. We had become friends over time. We went out together, but I came to realize that she was becoming increasingly irritated when I told her about Samia. Consequently, I ceased our outings. She informed me that she had developed feelings for me. In response, I told her that I still had feelings for Samia. She suggested that our relationship could serve as a means of forgetting her. I agreed to this proposition. I began dating her, which initially felt peculiar given my previous relationship with Samia. However, with time, I grew accustomed to it and developed a fondness for her. As our relationship progressed, she exhibited increasing jealousy toward Samia. Nevertheless, I refrained from discussing her, even after she openly admitted to it. Her behavior was rather peculiar, and I was unaware of the circumstances surrounding it. I resided on campus, so I was not privy to the conversations that took place outside of our immediate circle. The neighborhood where I came from was abuzz with chatter about my past experiences with Samia, with anecdotes about my broken arm and other misadventures. I reassured Marie that those days were behind me, but she often drew parallels between herself and Samia. This is, indeed, the case. Marie attributed her own attractiveness to the influence of Samia, whom she considered to be exceptionally beautiful. Despite my attempts to reassure Marie that her own appearance was beyond my control, she continued to blame me for having dated a woman who was, in her estimation, more attractive. I informed Marie that she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, but she persisted in comparing herself to Samia. Samia would inquire about my activities with Samia, which she found disturbing. She was unable to accept my intimacy with Samia. Despite these issues, I proposed marriage to her. She was from the same culture as me, which suited my family. However, I lacked the strength to fight for our relationship. Further conflict was inevitable. The wedding was scheduled for August, which was convenient for me because I would have completed my studies by then. Aside from her insecurities, everything appeared to be progressing smoothly until 2 weeks ago when I received a call from an unfamiliar number from a man who introduced himself as her former romantic partner. He informed me that he and Marie were still in contact and that they had engaged in sexual intercourse on multiple occasions. I was skeptical about the veracity of this claim. He informed me that he and Marie were still in contact and that they had engaged in sexual intercourse on multiple occasions. I was initially skeptical about the veracity of this claim. I considered the possibility that his former partner was attempting to disrupt our relationship. However, he provided me with screenshots of their correspondence, which corroborated his account. He then requested a meeting. I was motivated to inform Marie of the situation, but I ultimately decided to proceed first. I had 2 friends accompany me in case the individual in question attempted to deceive me. He then presented me with evidence, including screenshots of their conversations and messages. These messages revealed that they had been in contact for 2 months. Marie subsequently terminated the relationship a week before I became aware of it. He contacted me directly. I called Marie and informed her that we needed to speak with one another. I experienced no anger or positive or negative emotions. I felt as though I were a spectator observing his life on film. A friend of mine suggested that I record our conversation, which I did when I informed Marie of the information I had learned. She was taken aback. She informed me that the allegations were untrue and that the individual in question was not attempting to damage our relationship. I then proceeded to present her with the photographic evidence. She reiterated her stance, stating that the situation could have been fabricated. I informed her that I had visited the individual in question and that he had shown me his phone, along with the details of their discussions. She then proceeded to break down and begin crying, requesting my forgiveness. I was at her residence in her room when her family arrived to ascertain the situation. I proceeded to elucidate the circumstances to them, but they remained unconvinced. I did not attempt to persuade them, and subsequently departed. They had contacted my family prior to my arrival at their residence. I informed my mother of the circumstances surrounding the incident. According to Marie, she had been informed by Samia that I was engaging in secretive interactions with Samima. It was also suggested that Samia had returned to the area without my knowledge. The prevailing sentiment is that Marie is portraying herself as the victim, while Samima and I are depicted as the perpetrators. I was so incensed that I resolved to sever all contact with everyone. It has been 10 days since I have spoken with anyone in the neighborhood. I am currently staying with a friend from school, so my whereabouts are unknown. I have turned off my phone and only contacted my mother via email. I have also received numerous emails from Marie, but I deleted each one without reading them. I have chosen to refrain from reading them, as they are of no consequence to me. I am unsure of my next steps. I am frequently asked to forgive her, but I am unable to do so. I feel nothing but disgust for her, but I am uncertain of how to proceed. The situation is complex, and I am seeking advice. I have not provided an update for some time. I have been grateful for the considerable support I have received via direct messages. In response to requests, I am providing an update here. I have provided a link to my initial post above for those who require context. The incident occurred shortly before my final examinations, which may explain my lack of emotional response. I was in a state of autopilot throughout the period of my examinations. In that context, my focus was solely on the task at hand. I have now completed my studies and am officially an engineer. I maintained a distance from Marie, my former fiancée, her family, my family, and anyone else who might have had an interest in my affairs. However, in the evening, once I had completed my studies for the day, I was compelled to engage with the situation. Upon returning to my apartment following the completion of my examinations, I was overwhelmed by a sense of overwhelming emotion. I was fatigued and experienced a profound sense of isolation and abandonment. I was acutely anxious about the messages I anticipated receiving on my phone, so I avoided checking it. I was simply seeking solace in sleep. I engaged in the consumption of the majority of my peers' cinematic works, which, in turn, led to. In my AP, I experienced visual hallucinations involving Marie. These images depicted moments of physical intimacy, including cuddling and making out. I felt a sense of uncleanliness, which prompted me to scratch and then take a shower. This process was repeated twice that evening. I had difficulty falling asleep in my bed. I scratched again because it reminded me of all those times Marie and I slept in the bed. Consequently, I laid down on the floor the next day. When the images were too much to handle, I began scratching again and showering to feel clean. I did that 8 times. Currently, I am doing it 3 to 4 times a day. I am concerned that I may be causing irreparable damage to my skin. Has a similar experience ever occurred to any of you? I hope that this is not indicative of a compulsive mental illness. The following day, I accessed my phone and discovered a plethora of messages, exceeding 200 text messages and numerous voicemails. I did not peruse any of them and proceeded to delete them all. I lacked the fortitude to continue. I proceeded to my family's residence, having reached the conclusion that it was no longer feasible to conceal my circumstances. I was acutely aware that I would encounter individuals with whom I had a history of conflict on a weekly basis. Upon my return, I discovered my uncle, my father's brother, and myself. He was the proclaimed head of the family following the death of my father. His wife, whom I will refer to as, which, due to her alleged magical abilities, had children, extended family, and siblings, including a 13-month-old, a 9-month-old, and a 5-year-old girl. My mother was notably absent. Upon my arrival, my uncle immediately began verbally abusing me, and I did not respond. I was grateful for the opportunity to acknowledge him. The sight of my little sister running to me for a hug was a blessing. I love this little girl. My siblings view me as a role model. I felt guilty for not talking to them for so long. Typically, when I am there on the weekends, I help with their homework. I also put the youngest to bed and told them some stories that my father used to tell me. My father used to tell me stories, and when I am in my own apartment, we converse each night to discuss the events of their day. We are very close, but my uncle continues to verbally assault me, which has led to my frustration. I was seated in front of everyone, as though I were undergoing an evaluation by a jury, which inquires Marie subsequently altered her account, stating that she had not engaged in sexual intercourse with her partner. She attributed this confession to the considerable pressure I had exerted on her. However, I am aware of the content on AP's phone, which revealed a different narrative. The individual in question, Marie, has become increasingly unclear to me. She proved to be a highly manipulative individual. It is perplexing how someone could conceal such a malevolent character for so long. Alternatively, perhaps I was too naive to recognize her true nature before we began dating. She informed me that she could not tolerate dishonesty, and that she held a particular disdain for narcissistic individuals. However, she herself exhibited all of these traits. She detests it. At that juncture, I was no longer concerned. I informed everyone of my experiences and gave them the option to believe either me, with whom they have known for many years, or someone they have known for a shorter period of time. This individual had told me that it was impossible because Maria is a sweet and loving girl who helps the community and volunteers. I informed her that this was irrelevant because even Hitler volunteered at some point in his life. My uncle stated that if it is true that Marie slept with AP, I have the right to terminate the relationship. She pursued any and all relationships, but when she said that it didn't matter if it was true because it would be just a mistake made by a young girl, my uncle immediately agreed with her. He is, in my estimation, the most foolish individual I have ever had the misfortune to know. He may have an opinion on any given matter, but as soon as his wife says otherwise, he changes his mind. I would not even be surprised if his wife had cheated on him. I am somewhat surprised if his wife was unfaithful to him and he was aware of it. He is a passive individual, but perhaps he is genuinely afraid of his wife. He is quite small in stature compared to her. When you see them walking together, you might imagine a woman accompanied by her child. Then, which tells me to confess it was because of Samia 23 FI. I remained calm and replied that I had not heard from Samima for 2 years. My uncle informed me that, were it not for Samia, I would be easily able to forgive Marie. I was unable to tolerate this any longer and told him that I would forgive Marie if he allowed me to sleep with Witch for 2 months. This resulted in a state of chaos. My uncle attempted to strike me, but my friends attempted to persuade me to forgive Marie, despite the fact that they were aware of her infidelity. They asked me to pardon what they themselves were unable to imagine. I informed them that I would no longer allow anyone to interfere in my life. I was in a state of distress, and my uncle stated that he would never forgive me. I was effectively estranged from my family in that moment. I was indifferent to their opinions and went upstairs to my room. Given that I still have a room there, I experienced some regret. After all, they were still my family. I began to question the reliability of what AP showed me. For a brief period, I considered whether I could forgive her if it was just a kiss. Ultimately, I concluded that I could not, and never would. Due to the fact that my parents were unable to collect me from school due to their occupational commitments, it was our neighbor who assumed responsibility for this task. He was also the father of 2 children who attended the same educational institution. I then proceeded to reside at his residence until the evening. He provided me with exemplary care and treated me as though I were his own child. He bestowed upon me small candies on each occasion. I was given gifts by him, and I held him in high regard. He was a kind and helpful man who ultimately took his own life due to his wife's infidelity. This exemplifies the potential consequences of cheating. I subsequently learned that his wife relocated to Canada with their children and her lover. This incident may have contributed to my aversion to infidelity. In light of this experience, I have chosen to avoid further emotional investment in a relationship with Marie. Despite my reservations, I have observed a significant level of effort from individuals to rekindle my relationship with her. However, I am uncertain about the motivation behind this push and the potential benefits for them. My mother has recently returned, and it seems that she has been informed about the developments. She has entered my room and the initial actions she took were to embrace me, inquire about my emotional state, and discuss my academic performance. Despite her tendency to express affection through her actions rather than words, she exudes a kind and amiable personality. I recall a few years ago when I was employed in a fast food establishment while pursuing my studies, I frequently returned home at approximately 2, the time is 12 a.m. Subsequently, she was present and engaged in conversation while I consumed the reheated dinner she had prepared. We attempted to avoid disturbing others with our laughter, so we discussed the circumstances surrounding my uncle and his wife. In my previous post, I provided a comprehensive account of the reasons behind my decision to terminate the relationship with Marie. However, I had not disclosed the extent of her infidelity to my mother. Consequently, she formed the same assumption as the others, namely that the incident in question was merely a kiss. I was sorry for what I was going through, but what surprised me the most was that she was crying. It was the first time I had ever seen my mother cry. Even when my father passed away, she was still smiling and trying to be the support system we needed. She would only cry at night in her room when she thought everyone was asleep. I had a breakdown seeing her cry, and I could not stop myself from crying at that moment. She hugged me, and I experienced a range of intense emotions. Including sadness, anger, and hatred. She informed me that she would accept any decision I made. My mother returned downstairs, and everyone else left. I did not inquire about the content of her conversation with them. I was not particularly concerned about that detail. I postponed my phone again for the following week because I was too fatigued. I spent the majority of that time sleeping and engaging in leisure activities with my friends, including gaming. I was also attempting to cope with the emotional distress I was experiencing. My mother received multiple calls from Marie's parents, but she only informed me of one of them. She indicated that I was in a suitable position to discuss the matter. Marie was reportedly experiencing difficulties. She was hospitalized for a period of time and was becoming increasingly distressed due to my visit to Marie's parents. I requested that my mother meet me on one occasion, despite her initial reluctance. Consequently, I agreed to meet with Marie and her parents on the following Saturday. Throughout this period, Marie was the primary narrator. Therefore, it is now my turn to take the lead. I am uncertain as to how this interaction will proceed and whether I should arrange for them to visit my residence or for us to meet at their home. I will be prepared in my final post. I received a suggestion from an unidentified source to contact the individual in question using the designation AP, indicating that I might be willing to offer a second chance if I am unable to substantiate my claims. I followed this advice yesterday, and I will meet with him again tomorrow, on Sunday. He has informed me that there is a more comprehensive account of events, which I will receive upon our meeting. He has also stated that he will not provide evidence of these events to Marie, as it might influence her opinion of me. However, he has indicated that he will share the full story with me. Individuals have inquired about the status of these developments. In my previous communication, I indicated that I would contact Samia to express my regret for her involvement in this unfortunate situation, regardless of whether I was at fault. However, she reached out to me via email before I could do so. Her message conveyed a strong emotional response, accompanied by confusion about the reasons behind the repeated suggestions that I was responsible for damaging our relationship. Nevertheless, she inquired about my stance on the matter, which I have not yet addressed. I am currently undecided about how to proceed. I am currently experiencing a lack of cognitive clarity, but I will fulfill my obligation between the meeting of Marie AP and her family. I will provide an update at that time. Thank you for your patience. I have a brief update to share. I met with Marie AP yesterday. Due to the gravity of the situation, I am unable to provide a comprehensive account of the meeting. I met with him in the same location as our previous encounter. I documented the proceedings. In summary, they had a 4-year relationship, intermittently, and Marine was not a virgin, contrary to her assertion. He was also not a virgin. The first man with whom she had sexual intercourse was and remains deeply infatuated with her. Despite Marie's infidelity on 2 occasions, he was willing to work through the issues. However, Marie became pregnant, and the identity of the father remained unknown. Despite this, he was willing to accept the child as his and did not seek a paternity test. Marie's parents discovered the pregnancy and pressured her to terminate it. Due to the emotional distress she experienced, she ultimately had a miscarriage. She was severely depressed, and her family decided to relocate to start anew. He states that this was the period when Marie began to conceptualize the idea of bearing a child. Once more, she was a virgin, according to him. She felt as though she had experienced a miscarriage, a punishment for the way she had previously lived her life. They subsequently broke up, but they decided to remain friends. Thus far, he had not presented any evidence. He stated that he had changed his phone number, but he did show me the discussions they had had during the entire period during which I knew Marie. Marie indicated that she had encountered an individual who possessed the characteristics of the romantic relationship she had long desired to experience. Over time, she asserted that I was a commendable individual and that she could develop a meaningful bond with me. Through our relationship, AP became a trusted confidant when she experienced feelings of insecurity. Consequently, he possesses a comprehensive understanding of the nuances of our relationship. He disclosed details that were exclusively known to me. Marie is aware that he initially had reservations about her feelings towards me. She was drawn to the notion that I had previously enjoyed a highly fulfilling relationship and aspired to emulate that success. However, he believes that Marie's feelings towards me remain ambivalent. She seems to idealize the idea of a relationship with me, yet she has never felt fully secure in one. This has led to a kind of obsession. I am uncertain as to the veracity of the first part of his account. The veracity of this account remains uncertain. However, I am in possession of corroborating evidence that substantiates the assertions made by the individual in question. As time progresses, I am experiencing an intensifying sense of indignation, a sentiment that I find challenging to navigate. I am reluctant to engage with Marie's family, yet I am uncertain as to the veracity of the claim that they were aware of their daughter's intentions from the outset. What is clear is that I no longer desire to interact with Marie. I am compelled to share all the evidence with my acquaintances, as it is unjust that I, who was born and raised in my community, should bear the brunt of her actions. Nevertheless, I am reluctant to take such an action. I hold Marie's parents in high regard and believe that the most appropriate course of action would be to present them with the evidence and request their input before taking further action. I am currently undecided as to whether I will meet with them. I would like to express my gratitude for all of your support on my 2 previous posts and in my direct messages. I am experiencing a high level of distress at the present time, particularly given that many of you have lived for years with your spouse who has been unfaithful to you, and some have even had children with them. Consequently, this may be my final update if no new developments arise. I would like to thank you all and wish those who are going through similar experiences the courage to persevere. In light of the challenging circumstances resulting from infidelity, I am compelled to provide an update on my situation. Despite initial reservations, I have received numerous inquiries regarding the developments since my previous update. I would like to extend my gratitude to those who offered their insights and counsel in my previous post. I acknowledge that I was not in an optimal state of mind at the time, yet I made it a point to read each of your comments and am deeply appreciative of your guidance and support. I would like to address a question that has been posed by several individuals. Did I meet Marie and her family? The answer is affirmative. I met them at my residence with my mother prior to the scheduled meeting. I had sent a lengthy audio message to Marie's parents, in which I conveyed the entirety of the information I had gleaned from her alleged partner. I also stated that I was exhausted from her portrayal of me as the antagonist and her portrayal of me as the victim. I asserted that there was nothing remaining in the relationship that could be salvaged, but that I would reconsider if the rumors persisted. I was prepared to expose Marie and our social circle because it was unfair to suffer from something that I did not do. I informed them that I would have to cancel the meeting unless she immediately came clean. Marie's mother called me and said that Marie had finally told them everything. She had removed her posts and come clean on all of her social networks. I do not use Snapchat, or I was unable to ascertain the veracity of the claim via Instagram, so I was compelled to contact one of our mutual acquaintances to confirm. I was gratified to learn that she had indeed come clean. I felt constrained by the necessity to maintain appearances in a traditional family like Maurice's, and thus I proceeded with the meeting. I anticipated that it would be challenging to meet with Marie, given my reservations about how she would react. In reflecting on these moments, I observed that I scratched myself frequently. Initially, I anticipated that seeing her would be overwhelming, but ultimately, it was not. When we met, I was struck by how much she had changed physically. She had lost weight at an alarming rate and appeared despondent and adrift. She avoided eye contact and did not engage in conversation. We conversed briefly in the living room until her mother joined us. She implored me to take her back, indicating a profound sense of insecurity. I had already formulated a response and a list of inquiries, so I remained consistent in my approach. I initially inquired about the rationale behind her deception regarding her past and her tendency to present herself as someone she was not. She became visibly emotional and averted her gaze. Her mother stated that she had been subjected to scrutiny based on her past actions. I was then asked whether I was aware of the truth. I was asked whether I would still be willing to date her. I informed them that the answers to the "if" questions were not relevant at that juncture. They merely led to imaginary scenarios. The only scenario that was of consequence was the one in which she had chosen to lie about her past. This ultimately led to our current situation. It was the only reality. In that reality, I had been in a relationship for an extended period of time. I was involved with an individual who did not exist, who lied to me, and with whom I will never have the opportunity to ascertain the truth. In essence, her parents defended her, but Marie remained reluctant to engage in dialogue. The discussion proceeded in a cyclical manner, and at a certain point, they requested that I postpone the wedding, citing my love for their daughter as the reason. I was given the summer to consider the situation. I had not anticipated this request. It caused me confusion. I was unsure how to respond. My mother, who had remained silent throughout, observed that I was struggling to answer. She stated that she had already spoken with me and that I had already made my decision. She added that, should I change my mind in the future, she would advise me not to do so but would still support my choice. She informed them that the purpose of the meeting was to provide a sense of resolution and not to contemplate reconciliation. She conveyed that I was experiencing distress, sleep deprivation, and unusual behavior, including self-scratching. There was a prolonged silence. Marie requested a private conversation with me, emphasizing that her intention was not to persuade me to reconsider my decision but to discuss the possibility of accepting it. On the other hand, I informed her that I did not believe it was advisable to be in a room alone, but that we could go outside for a walk. We proceeded to walk for approximately half an hour. It was the first occasion on which I observed her to be so vulnerable, and the first time she accepted responsibility for her actions. She informed me that her promiscuous past was true, and that she had not experienced any traumatic events that might explain her behavior. She had grown up in a loving family, and it was likely that her nature was simply inclined towards early sexual activity. She began having sexual intercourse at the age of 12, and by the age of 15, at the age of 18, she had already engaged in sexual intercourse with 40 individuals, and she ceased counting after that. She informed me that she had never experienced love prior to her relationship with AP. She perceived sexual intimacy as a means of receiving love and validation. AP was her primary source of love and affection. She believed that AP's level of love for her was unattainable and sought validation through sexual relationships with other men. However, she was unable to reciprocate AP's level of love and intimacy. She believed that she could only love when she was intimate with someone, but that the feeling would disappear and be replaced by a sense of emptiness. She eventually became pregnant and began to love her unborn child, but suffered a miscarriage. This prompted her to question her life choices and the direction she was taking. Her family relocated to enable her to start afresh. She ended her relationship with AP because she did not love him, but he was a good person and they remained friends. They continued to communicate with each other. Prior to our encounter, she had been made aware of my existence and that of Samima. Our initial meeting occurred in a fast food establishment where Samia and I were regular patrons. We were acquainted with the proprietor's son, who was also our photographic subject on numerous occasions. He would subsequently display these images, along with other memorabilia, on the walls of his restaurant. Among these photographs were two featuring me and Samia. One depicted us at the age of 11, while the other showed us at 19. The latter photograph was particularly well known in our local community. A year has elapsed. The photograph in question depicts a birthday celebration. The subject was born in September, and thus, Sam had prepared for the event throughout the summer. She purchased a tuxedo and rented an evening dress. She arranged for a limousine to be available for the occasion. She awaited the subject's arrival in front of the subject's residence. She promised the subject a memorable evening. The limousine departed, but after a distance of 200 meters, it stopped. The driver informed the passengers that they had reached their destination, but they had arrived in front of a modest fast food restaurant. I was too embarrassed to have put on a suit, have a ride in a limo, and end up in that fast food restaurant. She had a certain kind of humor, but that was cool. We ordered the same kebabs that the owner used to offer, and she bought a muffin and put a candle on it, lit it, and asked me to blow on it. The owner had taken a picture in that moment and liked to tell the prank that Samia had done to me, even if she did give me the greatest. The birthday incident is a topic for another narrative. When Marie became aware of the story, she requested additional information from various sources. This prompted her to express a desire to experience a similar level of affection and commitment. Upon meeting me, she recognized that I was the individual depicted in the photograph. She sought to gain a deeper understanding of me and was initially hesitant to divulge her past. However, she eventually resorted to fabricating details to conceal her history. She came to recognize that she was already emotionally invested in the relationship. She was unable to retract the falsehood she had told, as doing so would have irreparably damaged the relationship. Throughout the duration of the relationship, she experienced feelings of guilt. She eventually discovered that she was in love with me. This was the first instance in which she had experienced love without the expectation of sexual intimacy. The primary reason she was unable to engage in sexual intimacy with me was her fear that her feelings would dissipate if she did so. Our relationship was of paramount importance to her, yet she believed that her deceit would preclude our future together. If I discovered her feelings of unworthiness, this would exacerbate her insecurities about losing me. She was so self-loathing that she was sabotaging the relationship, including engaging in infidelity. When I uncovered the truth, it had a profound impact on her, leading her to lose herself. She attempted to maintain our relationship by resorting to deceptive and manipulative behaviors. She fabricated excuses and attempted to induce feelings of guilt in me to prevent me from ending the relationship. When her actions proved ineffective, she attempted to end her own life. She was hospitalized due to an apparent suicide attempt. She stated that she did not want to force me to remain in the relationship, and even if I forgave her, she would not be able to move on. She claims that she began therapy to understand her motivations and identity. She acknowledges that the process may be lengthy but expresses gratitude if I could forgive her and assist her in becoming a more admirable individual. At that moment, I was particularly susceptible to her requests and nearly agreed to maintain contact to provide assistance. I was compelled to empathize with this woman who had caused me pain. Despite my initial feelings for her, I recognized that our relationship was untenable. I informed her that I needed to create distance in order to facilitate my own healing. I explained that she was mistaken in her belief that she needed me to heal. I emphasized that for her to move forward, she would have to confront her issues independently. I suggested that this was the only way she could potentially grow and move on. She acknowledged that I was likely to say these things, but she was determined to try on her own. She informed me that she would have lived with regret for the remainder of her life had I not made the decision I did. She stated that she accepted my decision, but that she would not give up on me. She expressed her belief that she would become the best version of herself and that there was a future in which we would reunite. I informed her that I could never be with someone who had previously been unfaithful to me. However, I refrained from sharing this information. Instead, I simply stated that I had moved on and that it would not be beneficial for her if I gave her hope. She did not respond. We eventually engaged in conversation. We then proceeded to discuss other matters. Her parents had contacted her to inform her that they were already home. I accompanied her to her house and, before leaving, informed her that I would be maintaining a no-contact (NC) policy. I explained that this was the most beneficial way for her to facilitate the healing process. She concurred but expressed concern that we might encounter each other in our shared neighborhood. She requested a final embrace, which I granted, and subsequently departed. I experienced a sense of emotional relief following this conversation. I no longer felt resentment and was able to move forward with a renewed sense of positivity. I have not yet experienced a resurgence of anger, although I have been informed that the healing process is not linear. As I have been advised, this is not a straightforward matter. With regard to the question of whether I have met Samama, I have indeed had 2 encounters with her, although I am uncertain as to the suitability of this particular forum for discussing such matters. I may, however, provide a final update before my summer vacation, should anyone be interested in learning more about my experiences and future plans. I would like to express my gratitude to all those who have provided me with invaluable assistance throughout this process.